Next up, we have The Social Network, released October 1st in 2010, written by Aaron Sorkin. This film stars Jesse Eisenberg, Andrew Garfield, Justin Timberlake, and Armie Hammer. This film grossed a worldwide box office of $224 million on a budget of $40 million. Mark Zuckerberg, an unknown Harvard student, creates a social networking site that quickly grabs the attention of the masses. Jumping between the rise of the company and the lawsuits that occur, you see the fruition of an idea that one day became a $527 billion company with over 900 million members.
I think this is Fincher's best movie and one of the best films made this century. And somehow it lost Best Picture to The King's Speech, which is a very good movie, but The King's Speech has already been forgotten generally. And I mean, whereas The Social Network, it's still being discussed, analyzed, and studied, and outside of its relevance to modern society. And it will be continually discussed after this. And I think people think there's an expiration date to this film because of its relevance to Facebook, and they say that if Facebook ever dies, this film will ever die. But this movie is not about Facebook. It's about relationships. It's about betrayal. It's about connection. So there are a lot of underlying themes about this movie, and it's not really just about Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. It's a movie about the development of the most revolutionary piece of technology in decades, but ultimately it's not about technology. And the thing with Facebook is we know what it had become. By the time this film came out, it was a dominating force in the world, but we didn't know how it happened. We knew what happened, but we didn't know how it happened. And I think Sorkin's story is a fascinating portrayal of the scenes that took place to develop this newfound technology.
And one of my favorite parts of this movie is Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's score. It's unique, it's sensational. At times it's disturbing, curious, it's chaotic, and it attacks you at times, just like the film. And a quick fun fact is Aaron Sorkin, the writer, also has a cameo in this film. And this film is incredibly well acted by Jesse Eisenberg, Andrew Garfield, Armie Hammer, as well as great supporting roles from Justin Timberlake and Rooney Mara.
And I think this is probably my favorite use of nonlinear storytelling by Aaron Sorkin, because he sets up this film by establishing Mark Zuckerberg, his character, who he is, where he lives, and eventually the driving force and motivation of creating a new website. And then he has the establishment of the character, and then we cut to the deposition rooms, and we quickly learn that he's being sued by both the Winklevi and Eduardo, and Eduardo specifically is suing him for $600 million. And so that's the 20 minutes in the movie. That's what we learn. And I think most writers and filmmakers would have told the story from beginning to end, but by skipping ahead and showing the depositions and the actual lawsuits taking place, it was a great way to tell the story.
Yeah, and Sorkin and Fincher somehow made the story of Mark Zuckerberg and turned it into one of the most exciting dramas in years. And maybe the relevance of Zuckerberg in our daily lives makes it even more relatable, but I think Sorkin's script is remarkable, and it deserved the Academy Award he got for it. And I love the way they open this movie up with, which is basically just that conversation between Mark and his girlfriend at the time, played by Rooney Mara. This opening scene completely depicts Mark Zuckerberg and his personality and his character, and it's basically, we're trying to kind of like decipher this conversation that Mark Zuckerberg is having with Erica. And it's as if, you know, he's so fluent in code and computer programs. It's like he speaks in codes, and it's like he speaks like the programs he creates with incredible speed and veracity of words. And it's like he's having like 4 different conversations with Erica, who's trying to keep up with 1 or 2 of those conversations that he's having, while he's also having other conversations in his mind and other thoughts in his mind running in the background, kind of like a web browser. It's like his brain is a web browser with 12 tabs open, and you're doing like 10 things at once. And this scene perfectly illustrates Mark's genius intellect as well as his inability to connect with people.
Yeah, Erica is just doing her best just to keep up with what he's talking about. And Mark even ends up being annoyed and frustrated with her inability to stay up to date with what exactly he's talking about in the moment. And she's just stumbling over what he's saying. And she'll be responding to a comment about SAT scores, and then he's talking about China. and she thinks they're talking about the same thing, but he's like, no, what are you talking about? That's not what I'm talking about anymore. And so he's constantly skipping ahead. And also the scene shows that he's an insecure person who, when his abilities come into question, he has to defend himself by putting himself on a pedestal. For example, when Erica says that she finds appealing, she finds rowers appealing, then he reveals, yes, I did get 1,600 on the SAT. Before, he ignored her asking about his SAT score like it was no big deal. But once he feels slighted, he has to put that fact out in front of her. So he's constantly defending himself and his insecurities. And this is the first instance of that.
And like computer code, Mark is tone deaf and he lacks emotion. He thinks like a computer, or maybe computers think like him. He has no filter. He'll blurt out anything that comes out of his head. And he feels like no human deserves his full attention. It's mentioned a few times, especially during the deposition where they're asking if he has their attention. He tells them, you have the most minute amount of my attention, because he doesn't think other people are equal to him intellectually, so they don't deserve his full attention. And in a way, we've all kind of become like Mark, where we all have these connections and friends, but we don't really know any of them. We seldom see them in person, if we've ever even met them in person. And many of us use online social networks the way that Mark in this film and the story uses real-life social networks to try to improve his life or get ahead.
And also, Mark reacts horribly to rejection, because after Erica breaks up with him after that opening scene, that's what drives him to first write that horrible blog posts about her, and then that is the catalyst to him feeling motivated to create Face Smash.
Yeah, so Face Smash is kind of like this piece of a puzzle that Mark Zuckerberg uses in his brain that mashes with other pieces of puzzles that gives him like the idea of Facebook. And Face Smash is one of those catalysts. The other one is the idea that the Winklevoss twins pitch him, but it's just not that good of an idea. So he puts like all these ideas going on in his head together, and it creates that spark. And I love this scene with the Face Smash, because Fincher is cross-cutting Mark creating a mildly sophisticated program of ranking girls' photos, while the guys that are in those exclusive clubs that he wishes he was a part of are, partying with girls. And it's a great metaphor for how Mark Zuckerberg's potential would put him on a level of exclusivity that those guys would never reach in their entire lives. And it's ironic that the girls that they're partying with, they're getting naked with those guys. And whereas on the Face Smash program, the guys are just basically rating girls on their looks.
So I think that's exactly the point where Zuckerberg and his friends...
This episode of Raiders of the Lost podcast is also brought to you by Manscaped, the leaders in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your comfort, obsesses over their technology developments to provide you the best tools for your grooming experience. Manscaped has been awesome. They sent us their performance packages. Their rep Kyle has been great. They're sending us even more stuff coming this week. We'll let you know what it is when it shows up. I'm pretty excited to get it.
It's a great product and a great brand. Check them out.
Yeah, we have their luxury lawnmower groomer, which is the greatest clippers I've ever used in my life. I don't know what I've been doing using these things at CVS that cost $12. My life has changed. Yo, it has a light and it's waterproof. You can trim in the shower and everything. Again, Raiders of the Lost at checkout for 20% off and free shipping. And everybody, grooming is a necessary part of life. The holidays are coming up. Whether you're a guy, a girl, whatever, if you need a gift for somebody, if you have men in your life, brothers, siblings, cousins, a father, aunts, uncles, whatever, I highly suggest getting them something from Manscaped.
Through Face Smash are objectifying women, but then the women are objectifying themselves at that party. So it's an ironic catch-22 where both parties are guilty in some way. And then you're right, this Face Smash was one piece of the puzzle, and with Face Smash, he discovered the desire for something like this, because the site got 22,000 hits in like 2 hours and broke the system. And so we saw the potential that combining social media with attraction and sex created this explosion of traffic. And so this was him realizing, I think, that the importance of social life and sexual life and how they're entwined, and how social media, especially Facebook, found so much success because when we were young and we were using Facebook, it was important to see if like a girl you liked, if their profile said single or or dating or in a relationship.
Yeah,
that's the driving force of people.
That's the final piece of code that he wrote for Facebook before they launched, is because he had the idea, but it didn't seem finished yet, and he had been building the program while keeping the Winklevoss twins at bay about what they wanted from him. And it's when that person comes into him in class and asks him, "Hey, do you know if this girl is single? Do you know if she's dating anybody?" And then he realizes that's the final key, is to put relationship status, because everyone wants to know how to make a emotional connection or physical connection online, and that's sex drives pretty much everything for young people and a lot of people even in their older age.
Yeah, sex drives behavior. And fun fact, his roommate, that friend of his, that's the kid from Jurassic Park.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
You're right. That is him.
And now for all you young kids who are listening, Facebook, when it first launched, was not what it's like now. So Facebook, it was like pretty much like a basic desktop page. It had some photos.
It's kind of like MySpace. There actually wasn't even photo tagging in this. You just had a couple of photos. You had your profile photo, and then you had friends, and you could like chat with your friends, and you can make posts on your page. But that was the initial Facebook, and then it slowly developed and evolved into different ways. For example, adding photos in photo albums, and then being able to tag people in your photos. And so Facebook slowly developed all of these social media ideas that we're used to. It slowly implemented this over time. It's not like Facebook launched and it had everything set perfectly. They slowly made it better as time progressed. And this film, I think, it's fascinating because they showed the progression of Facebook. Yeah, I remember when they launched the wall, which is
like
your
it
page.
was a big deal.
Everyone was like, what is the wall?
Look at this wall.
It's so dumb. And then like the feed. And so like they know exactly what they're doing.
And also I had no idea that Facebook was created at Harvard, in that it was an exclusive website for only people at that school. And then as they branched out, they only branched out to other colleges at first. So it got to the point where maybe a dozen colleges had Facebook, and then it slowly began rolling out to bigger audiences. So it's fascinating to see how Facebook began.
Yeah, and status is a main theme of this film, is something that drives Mark Zuckerberg, because he was never really interested in money. He was more interested in increasing his status in life, and he's obsessed with it. And he wants to belong to the elite. He wants to be admired. That's why he blogs. He wants people to read what he writes and wants to see what he's doing. And he's basically an anti-hero in the first hour and a half of this movie. He's not very likable. He does some shady things to friends. But towards the end of the film, you kind of get on his side and realize the visionary that he was and what he created changed the world forever.
But you're right. He absolutely is not fueled by money, but he's fueled by the desire for recognition. And he actually hints at this in that first conversation with Erica, where he asks her, how does someone set themselves apart from other people if all of the people scored 1,600 on the SAT? So he's obsessed with distinguishing himself from the pack. And so his driving force in his life is being able to branch out and become his own person and do something greater than everyone else.
Yeah, and that's why he's at Harvard. There are two reasons I think he's at Harvard. Obviously, it's a very prestigious school, but also it's more than just being smart. It's getting ahead, and it offers all these connections, and just like social networks online, it was like those in-person connections that really drove interaction and helped people get ahead. And also, to me, Zuckerberg's such a genius, and Harvard, for these high intellectuals, it's really kind of just like a limbo kind of place where they have to just check it off their list, and they have to just do it.
It's part of like the requirement.
Yeah, it's part of like their future resume. So even though he's smarter than his professors, and that's why he's drinking on a Tuesday night, creating face smash for fun, he doesn't have to go to Harvard because he's a freaking genius, but he kind of also has to go to Harvard.
And he has resentment towards people like the Winklevoss twins, who got into Harvard because of who their parents are and who their family is, less so because of their intellect and skills. And he also resents the fact that he can't get into any of the finals clubs. And
it's Final Club. Finals Club.
And that ends up breeding a great amount of resentment and tension between him and Eduardo, because Eduardo starts getting attention from the Phoenix Club, which ends up making Mark extremely jealous and even passive-aggressive towards him, where he even says the comment, "Oh, yeah, you're probably right. It was probably a diversity thing for them picking you."
Because he's Brazilian.
Yeah.
And Eduardo is really Mark's only friend, and they have a strained relationship because, again, Mark can't emotionally connect with people, even though Eduardo can, and it takes a toll on them, and Mark ends up betraying Eduardo, who's his only best friend, because he basically trades in his best friend for Sean Parker later on in the film and in the story to increase his status and to get networked, in-person networking, and in-person with cool people who know the industry.
Yeah, and basically nearly every conversation with Mark and Eduardo revolves around Mark needing something from Eduardo. I can't remember how many times, it might be 6 or 7 times, he says to Eduardo, I need ... He needs something, money, the emails for the Phoenix Club. So he always is using Eduardo for his resources to benefit himself. And then I know that this is not a perfectly accurate portrayal of Mark Zuckerberg in real life. I'm sure he's not as ruthless as he made him seem in this film, but also you cannot deny the fact that he did a horrible thing to his best friend by deceiving him into losing all of his shares in the company of Facebook. It is a horrible thing that really happened.
This episode of Raiders of the Lost podcast is brought to you by our friends at movieposters.com. Use coupon code Raiders15 to get 15% off your order today. Movieposters.com is the best site to get your movie posters. It has been for years. They've been great to work with. Thanks so much to David for hooking it up with our posters. They also sponsor our giveaway contest, which we do every month. They offer great options for original designs, framing, backlight, canvas, and even plaque designs. Use coupon code Raiders15 to get 15% off your order today at movieposters.com. Yeah, it's too bad because Eduardo seems like a very loyal friend and hardworking, and he actually genuinely seems like he cares about Mark, whether or not they actually had as strong a relationship as you might think. And Sean ends up using Mark, as well as Mark using Eduardo and Mark using Sean eventually. And the only person who doesn't make out until later on is Eduardo. So he kind of the three of the trio, he gets axed from the company.
I love how, as the story is unfolding, it's being told to us both in the scenes, but also in the depositions, where we're learning more about motivations, where we're learning more about decisions and communications between these characters through the various depositions between the Winklevosses and with Eduardo Saverin. And as the film progresses and we go through more of the deposition scenes, we begin to learn that Mark is a manipulator, and he's a master manipulator. And it gets to the point where maybe he doesn't even know that he's doing anything wrong half the time, because you can't help but deny that although he technically, yes, he did not steal any code from the Winklevosses, but he was leading them on and gaslighting them for an entire month while he was building the Facebook. And clearly he knew that he was breaking some kind of morality, because that's why he would lie to the Winklevosses. Because if he was a moral person, he would have dropped out of that project right away. But instead, he delayed their site from going up because he knew it would create competition for the site that he has an idea for. So he manipulated the Winklevosses to prevent them from building their site, which allowed the Facebook to take over the campus.
Yeah, and that's the main conflict of the film is the legal dispute of the Winklevoss twins, who claim that Mark Wahlberg, who claim that Mark Zuckerberg stole their idea for Facebook. When really, when you look at it technically, he didn't steal any of their code or anything. And there's that great line where Mark says, if you were the inventors of Facebook, you would have invented Facebook. And I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't the deposition dialogue incredibly accurate to the actual depositions?
Yeah, so it's not word for word, but Aaron Sorkin was allowed to look through all of the depositions with lawyers present in the room with him, and he spent several days researching through the deposition. So a lot of the dialogue is very much accurate to what happened in those deposition rooms.
And the Winklevoss twins are played both by Armie Hammer, and they filled this with a combination of camera angle tricks, CGI, and split screen takes. And Hammer played the main twin in each shot whenever they are on camera together. For the shots included the twins at the same time. And Josh Pence, an actor, stood in for the second twin. And throughout the filming of other scenes, they would just constantly basically switch chairs if it's like the back of someone's shoulder or something like that. And the same thing with Benjamin Button. They put Hammer into a little more of an advanced like motion capture box where that was this incredibly well lit like cube circle kind of thing. And they strapped his head into a harness, and he would film the twins in voice for each of the scenes, and then they would digitally superimpose that onto Josh Pence's face.
The Social Network has more visual effects shots than the new Godzilla film does.
That's insane.
That's crazy. It has over 1,000 special effects shots because of how they filmed the twins. This film was a breakthrough for all three of these actors, and especially Armie Hammer, because I don't think I had seen him in anything before this. Andrew Garfield, he was in Boy A and a couple other films, and then Jesse Eisenberg was in a few films, but obviously this was the breakout for all of them. But for Armie Hammer, I think this was a huge breakout for him. He's fantastic in this movie, and I think he plays two characters, and they're great antagonists for Mark. As Armie Hammer showed in Call Me by Your Name, extremely talented actor. And so that's the first deposition, and then the second deposition is the lawsuit of Eduardo is suing Mark, because what happened was when the company went public and they diluted their shares in order to give to new investors, Mark pretty much deceived Eduardo and had him sign contracts that he thought were in his favor, but ended up taking all of Eduardo's shares and giving them the shares to new investors. And Eduardo, after the company went public, wound up with 0.03% stock in Facebook.
And you can also say, this was a terrible thing for Mark and Sean to do to Eduardo, but, at the same time, he didn't sign the papers. He should have taken the proper precautions and looked through the papers himself and have lawyers look at them. But also, what saved Eduardo's ass is that original articles written about Facebook and lots of evidence and data list him as a co-founder of Facebook, meaning that he has a right to 50% of that company, which is why that incredible scene when he comes into Facebook headquarters and he smashes Mark Zuckerberg's computer and he's like, I'm not coming for 30%, I'm coming for everything. And I love the scene because it's the first time we see a look on Mark Zuckerberg's face where he's vulnerable, he's in trouble.
And I was surprised that Andrew Garfield didn't get nominated for this movie, because that scene alone is the best bit of acting in the entire film for every actor. He absolutely owns that scene, and you can see so much pain and betrayal and then anger and rage in him, and he goes through all of this, and Fincher does that great shot where he dollies with Andrew as he approaches Jesse Eisenberg, and it's a fantastic moment. And it's a vital moment to the development of the friendship where it's over now. And then Eduardo says in that deposition, "I was your only friend. You had one friend." And then Mark, since he was so blinded by Sean Parker, he was so blinded by building the company up, he abandoned his only friend. And by the end of the film, Mark realizes after the depositions are over that he really doesn't have any friends. And what happens is the ending of this film, it can be seen in several ways. And the way I look at it is what happens in the film is Mark is alone in the deposition room, and he's on Facebook, and he finds Erica Albright's profile, and he sends her a friend request. And then we see him refresh it over and over again, and he's just staring at the screen. While this is taking place, the song "Baby You're a Rich Man" by the Beatles is playing. And that song is about pretty much understanding that what you already have is enough, and just love what you got, essentially. And so I think in this moment, Mark is finally understanding that the relationships you have with people are the most important thing in life and what matters most. And he's finally reaching out to a person for the first time in this film, and he's trying to make an actual, genuine human connection.
I look at it in a different way. I see that it's an ultimate act of irony that he's becoming a user of his creation. And it's ironic because he created the most popular program, social media network on the existence of the entire planet for who knows how long that will last. And he still can't connect with people. He still can't emotionally connect with people. And he has become a user on this program in an attempt to try, like you said, try to reach out to somebody. And it's just an ultimate form of irony.
That's a fun way to look at it too. I can totally see that.
And also, the entire irony of this whole story is that the most antisocial person you can think of, again, created this massive social network that everyone uses. And also, this ending shot is really great, and this ending scene is great because he's talking with the girl Marilyn, played by Rashida Jones, and she says, "You're not an asshole. You're not an asshole, Mark. You're just trying so hard to be." Whereas in the beginning of the film, Erica says, "You're an asshole." So it's kind of like a full circle for his character.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't specifically say how much the Winklevoss twins or Eduardo Saverin got paid, but
No, they say the Winklevoss.
oh, how much did they get paid?
I think the Winklevoss, it was like in the 60s or $80 million.
That's crazy. I think that people are estimating that Eduardo got $600 million from Facebook for the lawsuit,
I believe that for sure.
which is crazy amount of money.
He's now a billionaire,
Yeah.
which I mean, I'm sure.
And they also put his name back on the masthead as well.
Yeah, so that was a big important step for him too, for his conditions.
Yeah, but ultimately, this is such a fascinating look at how the story played out and how Facebook was built. And this app, even though Facebook obviously is not as popular as it used to be, not saying they don't have a lot of members, but it's less cool than it used to be. It still owns all the apps that are cool now.
Yeah,
And so
it owns Instagram.
it's not like it doesn't have it's losing its power. Facebook has become just one of the most powerful companies in general. It's right up there with Apple and Google. So it's become a power in this world that we still don't even know what it's going to be able to do in 20 years. Who knows what Facebook's going to be capable of. And it's just fascinating to think that all of this was built in a dorm room with code written on a window.
An algorithm.
An algorithm. You're right, an algorithm. I'm not a nerd like you. All this algorithm written on the window, it's
Hey, I'm
not
just
a
being
code.
factual to the story. You know, you want to be fucking making shit up over there.
Mark Zuckerberg actually took some of his employees to see this film together. And after the film, he said most of it's not true. But he did say that they captured his wardrobe perfectly with the sandals and socks and nothing but sweatpants and hoodies.
Yeah, I think he said he had every piece of wardrobe that was in the film.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.